an Excelsior Studios original production. Throughout this podcast, sensitive subjects such as sexual assault, eating disorders, and suicidal thoughts will be mentioned. Listen with care. All right, I'm sorry. I know I've been MIA. I don't want to leave you all hanging. I've had so much going on with work that I could not get to finishing this podcast. And in my defense, a lot's happened. Since we last spoke, Megan's out of jail. Actually, she's been released from jail twice. Don't worry, I'll explain. You may have seen, if you follow me on X or Instagram, the podcast Instagram, or if you're in the Facebook group, or if you're listening to Something Was Wrong, that Megan's out. She's scamming people again while she's digitally panhandling, begging for money online. She doesn't believe that that's scamming. She seems to believe that there's going to be a 60-minute special on her. I haven't heard anything about that. There's a lot to get into. Instead of digging into the AI and all of that, in this episode, I'm just going to lay out to you what's happened since everyone cut her off last November and tell you where we're at in present day. At the end of this episode, we're going to get into what this podcast will become, because I don't want to be Megan's digital babysitter, but I also want to make sure that the word is spread so nobody continues to be scammed. So thank you for tuning in. I promise I won't ditch you again. Let's just get into the episode. I'm Amanda, and this is Don't Waste This Effing Podcast, the story of Megan Stoner. In the last episode, we left off with everyone that had been communicating with Megan cutting her off and refusing to continue taking her calls. We felt that we were giving in to her sick behavior and making it so that she would not get better. Megan continued to call, but eventually, after a few weeks of those calls being ignored, she got the picture and stopped calling Justin and Alex and Alyssa so much. On November 22nd, 2023, Megan accepted a plea deal for her 9 charges being brought against her by the state of Indiana for fraud, theft of between $750,000 and $50,000, and corrupt business dealings. I want you to remember 2 things about these charges in her plea deal. First, she's only being charged with the things I just listed. There were only 3 or 4 victims listed on that probable cause affidavit. Chloe, you'll remember, estimates that there were between 20 and 50 total victims. And like you heard previously as well, some victims that you heard from were not able to be added to the charges because they were scammed at different properties. So these charges only refer to one address that she ran the scam at. Second, this doesn't include any of her other antics that we've talked about on the podcast. Not stealing from Edward and Tom, not the crazy messages, not claiming to be politicians, not the fake sexual assault allegations, none of it. The worst charge in this case was the corrupt business dealings charge, which is a level 5 felony. Felonies in Indiana are graded on a scale of 1 to 6, with 6 being less severe and 1 being the most severe. Typically, a level 5 felony can carry a sentence of between 1 and 6 years and up to $10,000 in fines. Other charges that fall under this category in Indiana are burglary, some drug dealing offenses, and battery resulting in moderate bodily injury. However, something that Megan's public defender figured out, credit to him because she kept trying to fire him, if you remember, he figured that this charge doesn't apply to Megan's case because she technically didn't operate a business. Apparently, this charge only applies to actual businesses filed in Indiana and not people who are just presenting themselves as business owners, such as landlords. So Megan's public defender was able to get her a plea deal, which again she accepted on November 22nd, 2023, that would dismiss the corrupt business dealings charge, 5 of the theft counts, and 1 count of fraud. So Megan pled guilty to 2 counts of theft of between $750,000 and $50,000. She was sentenced to 730 days in corrections, but that worked out to be only 102 more days served because she was given credit for 204 days in jail that she had already served. In addition, she would have to serve a year of probation, which counts for those 730 days, and she would have to pay restitution to 3 victims named in the probable cause affidavit, which totaled to $2,500. So after her sentencing on December 18th, 2023, she had about 3 more months in jail and was to be released to community corrections, which is like a work release program, in March of 2024. So this sentence would be pretty light for her. Only a few more months in jail. She wouldn't have to go to prison, which I guess would have only kicked in had she been sentenced to more than a year of jail time, which is much less pleasant than the county jail she had been staying in. And she would be able to pay off that $2,500 in restitution she owed during that work release program, where she would have limited living expenses. And finally, maybe most importantly, she would be able to appeal and get the level 5 felony brought down to a misdemeanor if she behaved in jail and didn't violate her probation. So Megan got kind of a sweetheart deal through all of this. Justin and the others had limited interactions with her after her sentencing, but they started talking to her a little bit more. Thankfully, it did not get as intense as it was before. I mentioned previously that Megan seemed to really struggle with her time in jail before, but after her sentencing, when she saw a light at the end of the tunnel, she seemed to kind of accept that she was there and she didn't make such a big deal anymore. To a point. I mean, she did continue writing to the judge and her public defender, trying to get them to modify her sentence to make her either stay in jail longer or go to mental health treatment, but none of that prevailed. So Megan was released to this work release program on March 15th, 2024. She'd stay in some type of public housing where she had a pretty strict schedule and she had to find a job immediately. I guess the types of jobs that they have to find are like menial jobs, like at Goodwill or the back of the house at a restaurant. And they aren't allowed really to have free time to go do whatever they want to do. From what I can tell of this program, most of their living costs are subsidized, so they have to pay a little bit to live there for room and board, which they would pay out of their job salary. However, it's very affordable, and it's kind of like a continuation of jail with the possibility of paying restitution and a little bit more freedom than jail. And Megan had a problem with this. After a month, Megan did not get a job. I believe the way it goes in this program, most people get a job within days, but not Megan. It's not all Megan's fault. Unfortunately, her mom passed away on March 28th, 2024, just 2 weeks after she got out of jail. So Megan was afforded some type of bereavement. However, before her mom passed, within days of getting out, Megan already began begging for money for food on social media again. This got worse after Megan's mom passed away. She was asking for money for funeral expenses and the like. It sounds terrible, but within the community of people that had been following Megan's antics for years, many didn't believe that her mom had actually passed when the news came out, because Megan had claimed her parents had passed multiple times before when trying to get sympathy online. However, it was real. Like, listen to this call with Megan and tell me that it doesn't sound similar to stories you've heard before. This is the first call Justin had with her when they started talking again after she got locked back up. I believe this was all the way in May of 2024.
My mom just passed in her sleep, and we didn't do an autopsy, but before I got locked back up, I was trying to get her death certificate, and they haven't found a cause of death yet. They were getting her medical records, and they were like, well, we can't really find any medical records. And I was like, I really don't think there are any. Like, she didn't really...
She was cremated, right?
Yeah.
So they can't do another one. Like they can't do anything.
No. And, but at the time of being locked up, they still didn't have a cause of death, so they had no death certificate.
Right.
They were leaning towards cardiac arrest. Heart attack. I don't really know if they can put natural causes anymore on death certificates or not, but that's basically what we kind of thought it was.
Right.
It wasn't like there was foul play or anything. So she was just laying in bed, and my aunt walked in and found her.
And I just want to be candid here. I know Megan has scammed so many and continues to scam, and I hate that she does that, but I really do feel for her losing both parents at such a young age. However, losing her parents doesn't give her free rein to scam people. And again, it doesn't seem like she's going to stop. After another few weeks in work release, on April 22nd, 2024, the court issued 2 statements indicating noncompliance because she was failing to comply with the terms of her work release program because she had not gotten a job. And, well, this wasn't the only thing. She also was unaccounted for. Like, she wandered off 2 separate times and was not able to be found for, I believe, about an hour. And she was not allowed to be off doing her own thing during this program. Here's a call with Justin where she gave the explanation for why she was kicked out of work release.
I broke my contract basically with work release. That's basically what this is. I just broke my contract. And I'm really hoping to go back. I'm nervous because I don't want to sit in jail. But you know what? On the other hand, I don't have a whole lot to get out for right now. So it's not the worst place for me.
And finally, I won't have AI read this because there was drama after this documentation got released online, but Megan got in trouble for her social media usage while in work release. Apparently, she had asked another person in the program for their social security number. When Justin asked Megan about this, she told him it was because she needed to apply for a new cell phone and she was dating the person whose social security number she requested. I personally don't ask people I've been dating for 2 weeks for their social security numbers, but I'm single, so maybe I'm not exactly up with the times and the appropriate behavior between partners. The court documentation from the work release housing office also said that she had been messaging hundreds, if not thousands, of people per day online asking for money. You heard that right, hundreds, if not thousands. So, given Megan's poor behavior, on June 25th, 2024, she was remanded to Hamilton County Corrections Facility to complete the remainder of her sentence. She began speaking to Justin and the others, although less frequently, and this time especially, she seemed much more comfortable in jail. She seemed to actually be making friends with the other women in the facility, and she still kept up with the lies. Like, she would call Justin every few days, and the times he would answer, she'd have a new spin on an old story or a new story to tell him, most of which he knew was not true. However, she was not as manic as she was when she was initially sent to jail, like after the Ani scheme. In one of these schemes, she claimed to be an addict and needing to go to rehab instead of being in jail. I'll play a little bit of that.
Basically, I just want to explain that I started using pills when I was out after my mom died. And I need help. And I don't know where to seek that help.
Megan,
What?
I don't believe that story.
Well, you cannot believe it. I mean, I did.
You may have used some pills that weren't prescribed to you. I don't know if you did or not. But this is a very, very thinly veiled attempt to get into drug court to avoid going to prison. And if I can see through it that fast, so can everyone else.
I mean, it is true, though.
Is it true that you're addicted to something and you can't get enough of it, or is it true that you took a couple of pills and thought that would be enough to get you into drug court?
No, I started taking more pills than what was prescribed.
Okay. And is that still the case?
No, because I can't get access to them.
Exactly. Are you going through withdrawals?
I did when I got here for about a week. I mean, we're talking benzos, not heroin or meth.
We're talking what now?
Like benzos, like Ativan.
I know what
pills
benzos are.
Okay, I know. I'm just saying it's not like I was withdrawing from heroin or meth.
I don't think you were. You think I don't know people that have withdrawn off of benzos? I've been in AA for 6 years. I've seen it all. You're gonna have to try with somebody else.
Okay,
Megan,
no, I'm sorry.
this is not going to work. I'm gonna tell you that right now. There is not a person that has ever met you that thinks you're a pillhead or an addict. You
Well,
may
everyone seems
have
to believe that
you
the
may
OWI
have
did.
You may have used pills not as prescribed. I can't prove or disprove if you did. I wouldn't have even blamed you if you popped a few Xans to get through your mom dying. I do not for a moment believe that you're now an addict and need to seek addiction recovery. I think this is an attempt to get into drug court, because you told me before that you and Steve were working together to get you into drug court, and now you tell me you've only gotten 2 letters from him. So I know that wasn't true, that he was working on it. What I think happened is some girls that were in there told you about drug court and said that could be an option, and so now you're trying to spin it into, now I need to give myself an addiction so that I can get into drug court. It ain't going to work.
Well, I mean, it's an 18-month program. It's longer than my own sentence.
Doesn't matter. You don't qualify.
Glad that your judgment is what it is, but I also know what I feel I need.
You feel you need to go to drug court.
Yes, because I feel like I'm going to return to using. And I actually have been going to AA weekly.
It would be a big mistake on your part to go before the judge and say, hey, you see that big list of violations of my terms and conditions that I violated in work release? I'd like to add another one. I started abusing pills while I was in there as well. That's not going to go down well.
I don't think he's going to charge me right there in the courtroom.
He's not going to charge you right there in the courtroom. However, do you think that's going to make him more or less sympathetic to you that you violated the rules in yet another way?
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, probably not. So I would not advise going down this road.
Another time, she called Justin saying that she was going to be sent to prison for a longer sentence instead of jail because a letter got posted to social media.
Hey, I wanted to let you know, I haven't looked on social media yet or not, but I'm going to prison. So.
You're going to prison?
Yeah, I got a letter from my attorney. It said to be prepared to spend the rest of my time in DOC.
Where? But you haven't even had your hearing.
No, but community corrections won't take me back. They sent an evaluation over and it says I'm not fit to go back to community corrections. And so my attorney said, for the police finding being closed, Hamilton County Community Corrections response to a plus to take to that into their power. You're essentially afraid to contest allegations that evaluated community corrections to address all these points of court, which realistically, you can visit a finding that he violated company commitment and prepares for the balance of the sentence and DOC. Sincerely, Steve. I'm not going to in prison. We all know that. I like my aunt said, I'm not trying to get off the hook here, but I don't have enough life skills to make it in prison.
But most of the time, she was just asking what people were saying about her on social media.
Has the mustache tweeted about me? How is social media? Is there anyone talking about what I might get? I think I'm going to stay off social media when I get out. And I know I said that before, but I really think I'm going to.
So this is just kind of where we're at with the Megan situation. She found out about this podcast in July when it was being released, and I've played clips from those calls. She wasn't a fan at first. She also knows about the other podcast covering this story, Something Was Wrong by Tiffany Reese, which is amazing. You should all go listen if you're not already. I will link it in the description. In some way, it seems like Megan thinks of herself as some type of celebrity from the podcasts, which, to be honest, does make me regret doing it a little bit. However, given that she immediately began scamming when she got out on work release, we have all been proven right that she won't change her behavior. And that brings us to now, because since her release from jail permanently on November 8th, 2024, she is engaging in the same behavior once again. So on one hand, I don't want to make fun of Megan or make her a celebrity. On the other hand, I know if we're not spreading the word, she's either digitally panhandling or taking money from people who she is getting to feel sorry for her on social media, or worse, like stealing people's personal information and committing identity theft. Again, listen to Something Was Wrong for more about that. So I want to address a couple things now that we're kind of coming to an end on this series. The first, you will have heard when you're listening to this, I've put ads on. And I don't know why I felt so awful and conflicted about this. I'm seriously the worst Republican and like worst capitalist ever because I feel so guilty doing this, but I want to explain why I've done it. I want to continue making this podcast and I want to hire an editor to give you a better quality show. So, in order to afford to pay an editor, I need to monetize the show. If you hate the ads or if you want more content, I created a Patreon, which I'm working on uploading all of the old episodes without ads to. And on top of that, I put up all of the unedited interviews I did with everyone that you've heard on this show. So if you want more Megan content, I know some of you have listened like multiple times. I think there's like 6 hours of additional content on the Patreon, and I'll have the episodes uploaded there later today or tomorrow. I'm recording this on December 2nd, so you can listen to them ad-free. Speaking of continuing the podcast, it's weird because I only ever did this because I wanted to get the word out about Megan, but I've actually really enjoyed this. So thank you guys. I know the audience is from all over. Some of you are indie locals. Some of you are my old friends from CRs. Some are from my TikTok, where I make political and geopolitical videos. If you want more content from me about that, I'm starting to upload more to my YouTube, Amanda Talks Geopolitics. I'll link it in the description, talking about why we're allied with certain countries and all of that. And then some of you are coming from Something Was Wrong, and I'm like super, super grateful for all of you. I feel like we have like a cool little community. My goal for this podcast was always just, like I said, to spread the story about Megan and leave it be. But now that I've met so many of you and I've been sent some really cool stories to cover, I think I'm going to keep this going. So Tiffany from Something Was Wrong sent me a story. I have one from my hometown that I'm like somewhat connected to. I have a friend in London who sent one to me. I have a friend who sent me one, or somebody sent me one on Facebook that I'm going to talk to this week. And Justin has another story to tell. And all of these are fraud. It's kind of funny because I've never been a huge fan of true crime just because I think like murder stories and stuff are like very gory, but I like the fraud stories, and from what I can tell, a lot of you listening like those as well. And I think there's a shortage of like true crime content specifically about fraud. So if you want more content, I'm going to be drowning in this work, but I'm excited to keep bringing more seasons to you. So stay tuned, subscribe, because I think I have 5 other seasons. That's like a year and a half probably of more content. Speaking again of old friends from college Republicans or politics in general, I've had a few comments come through on Spotify that, people don't care if Republicans got scammed, or that I should be talking about like Republican scam, or I don't know, something like that. There's also a woman who has taken it upon herself to defend Megan on social media after hearing the podcasts and is trying to get into the Facebook group to defend Megan and stuff. Here's the deal. I've never mentioned this because I didn't think people's political affiliations mattered, but I believe about half of the victims I spoke about on this podcast, or whose voices you heard, are Democrats, not Republicans. And I just think it's fine. I don't know. I know some people get very triggered when they hear about like political things or something. I don't think I could have avoided talking about Republican politics. It's a critical nature of the story. I hope you didn't feel I ever gave like political opinion or something, because that's not what this is about. But it's funny. Like I was messaging with a friend I haven't spoken to in a long time, who I believe is a listener. And she's a former College Democrats of America chair in the Southwest. So Southwest United States. I don't want to dox her. But she told me she realized after listening to the podcast that Megan messaged her for money back in the day. And like, to explain to you how crazy this is, the only reason I met her is because we went to Israel together in January of 2017. That's the only, like, Megan, that's how far and wide Megan cast this net. It wasn't just Republicans. It was Democrats. It was everyone. I also never covered this on the podcast because there's just so much to cover. But there is audio somewhere of Chloe's husband Kyle explaining that how Meghan like tried to switch parties multiple times and hang around Democrats in Indy trying to get in with them, like when it looked like Republicans might lose. Because like Indiana is pretty much a one-party state. Like I think they have a super majority in the House and stuff. And this is kind of getting into the weeds with political things, but like when you have a super majority like that where Democrats can't really take back the state house, you basically have three parties. And you have like the more Trump Republicans, then you have like more moderate Republicans, and then you have Democrats. And like, I don't know, like a lot of the more moderate Republicans too, like they'll kind of be with the Democrats sometimes, or then the Republicans. It's like it's more complicated, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And I think just in general, people who work in political realms, we don't sit around and talk about our opinions on like national news all day. You tend to have more in common with people who actually work in the field, whether they're a Republican that agrees with you on everything or nothing, or are a Democrat. So a lot of people are pretty friendly with people who work on the other side. Maybe people don't know that, but it's kind of true. And I just think it's important to point out that Meghan tried to get in with the Indie Dems sometimes too. And I don't have proof of this, but I would be shocked if she didn't try to like get in and scam with them in some way, because she did it to everybody else on the Republican side. It seems to be a compulsion of hers. I don't think she'd be able to keep it in check with the Dems. And again, I don't have proof of this, but I'd be shocked if she didn't mention the sexual assault allegations previously mentioned on this podcast, especially against prominent Indie Republicans. And I think it speaks volumes that the Indiana Democrat Party and all of the women she was trying to get in with from there never spoke about any of these allegations during the height of Me Too. Like, I think that just speaks volumes. Again, I can't prove that they ever did that, but I wouldn't be surprised if more people reached out to me after this. Another thing, speaking of people who found out about Meghan's scams after the podcast came out, I don't want to dox Justin's workplace, but he found out after he and his coworkers have been listening together that Meghan actually scammed the small business that they work at years before he worked there. So shout out to all of Justin's coworkers, by the way. But yeah, I guess when they were listening, they realized that they got megged years prior. And so here's the thing. I know there's bigger stories to tell. Obviously, there's way bigger and worse criminals than Meghan. There are mass murderers out there, right? But the reason I feel like it's so important to tell this story is because when you realize how far and wide and broad reaching she is, like now I think she's not even begging for money on her own social media. She's having other people do it for her under the guise of asking for mutual aid, or I think she's using like fake accounts again, asking for money. Like I kind of realized this, like I know there's bigger stories to tell, but I also think that the only way to like really get Meghan under control, or at least prevent other victims from like being scammed, is by spreading the word about her. Because like while she's stealing kind of large amounts of money from some of these people and like really screwing them over, being that it's not like one big organized thing, I'm worried that it's almost going to cost the state of Indiana more to prosecute her than for what she's been charged with. So like there's calls that I tried to go back in my records and find, but where she tells Justin like, well, clearly I didn't get charged with that much because, they only got me on 4 counts. So she doesn't think it's a big deal what she's doing. In my opinion, it seems like she only thinks that she's liable for what she's been caught for, and they haven't caught her on that much, and they probably won't catch her for a ton. And it seems like she's just gonna keep up this fraud, keep up the scam. So like what she's doing is life shattering to some people, or it's just, even if it's not monetary, it's just causing them to like question themselves and really lose faith in humanity and friendships. And it probably, like I said, it probably takes more police resources to prosecute her than she's materially stealing in a manner that they can prove. So we're in a really annoying, tough spot here. And the best thing we can do is shed light on the situation. So while I agree with some of you that, yes, there are bigger frauds, or not even frauds, there are bigger criminals to go after, that doesn't mean that Meghan can can scam people and get away with it, you know, just because, and again, I don't want to keep repeating myself. I sound like my dad, but if the only way we're going to prevent this from happening is by spreading the word, I'm very comfortable spreading the word. I think I've mentioned this in the podcast before, but when I consulted a pastor about this, he said that, like, no, this is loving your neighbor. Like, spreading the word so she can't continue to scam people is loving our neighbor. This is my act of love for all of you. So thank you all for taking time to listen. I promise I won't leave you high and dry again. I'm going to have more content coming. I think for the rest of this podcast, I know Megan's listening. Megan, you've blocked me everywhere, but I did say at the beginning of the podcast through Justin that if you want to come on and give a little statement, you're more than welcome to. So if she chooses to do that, then we'll do that. The other thing is I want to do a question and answers like video or podcast, and I want to have like Chloe and Alex and Justin on to do that. So comment your questions about the story on Spotify or on Instagram or on Facebook. I want to compile all the questions and like do one more big one. But I want to do like maybe 2-3 more episodes of this season and then move on to these other stories. And then I will always be a source for information about Megan because, you know, I don't know if I've said this on here either, but Justin is convinced, and I think a lot of us are, that the worst thing Megan's done probably hasn't been done yet. Or like the worst thing she'll do probably hasn't come yet. She'll probably get worse, which is horrifying and frustrating, but we got to continue to get the word out. So thank you all so much for listening. Have a great rest of your week. I'm Amanda. This is Don't Waste This Effing Podcast, the story of Megan Stoner.